The test of visual perceptual skills, 4th edition, comes in this plastic container with the manual, the testing plates, and some scoring sheets. This assessment is used for individuals 5 to 21 years old and takes approximately half an hour to administer. The manual has step-by-step instructions on how to administer this assessment. You're going to start off by putting the client's demographic information, their name, gender, grade, if they're in school, the school they're at, your name, why you're testing them, the test date, and the date of birth, which you then use to figure out their exact chronological age. You can see here from the scoring sheet there are 7 subtests. Visual discrimination, visual memory, spatial relationships, form constancy, sequential memory, visual figure ground, and visual closure. For each of these subtests, there are 2 practice trials that the client gets that are not scored, and then there's 18 items for each subtest. So, for the examples, you will circle yes or no if they got it correct, and this assessment's great. The scoring sheet has the answers bolded, so you're not trying to figure out what their answer is while you're administering it. The answers are bolded. So for this one, if they said 1, then you would circle yes. If they said 2, 3, or 4 and got it wrong, you would circle no. And then for the actual assessment, you want to circle what they say, the answer they say, and then if they get it right, you'll circle 1. If they get it wrong, you will circle 0. So that's true for any of these subtests. There's 2 practice trials that are not, or 2 practice items that are not scored, and then 18 actual items that you score. For individuals 5 to 11, you're going to start off with testing item 1 after you've done the practice ones. For individuals 12 to 21, you're going to start off at item 4. Now with that, if the individual 12 to 21 years old gets item 4, 5, and 6, the first 3 items correct, you go on, you have them keep going on, and you give them credit for those first 3. For each of the subtests, the items get progressively harder. So if they get 4, 5, and 6 correct, you can assume that they would have gotten 1, 2, and 3 correct. If they get them wrong, you're going to go back and do those first 3 items and then pick up where you left off. You're not going to redo 4, 5, and 6. You'll start off at 7. There is a ceiling rule for this where you stop administering a particular subtest if the individual gets 5 out of 7 correct. It doesn't have to be consecutive. It's just 5 out of the last 7 incorrect. So if they get 5 out of 7 incorrect, you stop with that subtest and move on to the next one. You can see here that there's comments for you to put, any comments that you have. And for each of the subtests, there are specific instructions given that you say. So for visual figure ground, you'll say at the top you see a shape. In which picture below do you find the exact same shape hiding? And you give the prompt once, but you can give it again if needed throughout the assessment. You give the 2 practice ones and then administer the actual test items that you score according to the information I just gave. You will add up the total score for each subtest separately. And then you'll go back to the front page and put the raw score for each of those subtests in that column. In the manual, there are a variety of charts that you can use to figure out the scale scores and the other items. So you'll take that raw score from the raw score. You can figure out the scaled score. There's charts in the manual that will then, based on the raw score and the scaled score, give you the percentile rank and then the age equivalent The manual is quite in-depth, and it has all those charts for you. You're going to do that for each of the subtests. Add up the scaled scores, and then there's a chart in there where you can take that scaled score and get an overall standard score. Based on that, you can figure out the percentile rank and age equivalent with the many charts that are in this manual. The CI, the confidence interval. There's a chart in the manual where you can figure out the confidence interval based on 90 or 95%. To do that, you take the overall standard score and then look at the chart in the manual, and based on the client's age and whether you want to be 90 or 95%, have that 90 or 95% confidence interval, you will add the number that's in the chart to the person's overall standard score and then subtract it from the standard score. So if their standard score was, I'm making this very simplistic, if their standard score was 30 and the confidence interval chart you wanted to be 95% confident, you circle 95, and it said in the manual to be 95% confident or have that 95% confidence interval with the age of your client, you need to use 3. Again, I'm overly simplifying it, but what you would do is take that standardized score of 100, subtract 3, so that would be 97, and then add 3, so 103. And you would put here 97 to 103. And you can be 95% confident that your score would fall within that range. That's what that means. Down here, you have the subtest scaled scores. So for each of the corresponding subtests scaled scores, you, let's say on the visual discrimination, they received a 13 scaled score. That means their percentile rank would be 84. So 13 scale score, percentile rank would be 84, and you could circle it for visual discrimination, and then do that for the remaining subtests. So this is an assessment where you really need to look through the manual and find the appropriate charts. They're in there, but it does take some time to find and figure out and play with. Okay, so here's an example of sum of scale scores to that scale conversion. Here's where you can take that standard score and get things like the percentile rank. And there's charts for both the subtests as well as overall test scores in the manual. I'm going to show you just some examples from each of the subtests. Another thing that you have to get used to is figuring out how to flip the book. So for the visual discrimination, this is example 1. So again, the person is supposed to find which one looks exactly like the one below. So that would be 2. I'm going to kind of show you how they get progressively harder. So again, the person's supposed to find that image on top, below. The image on top, below. The image on top, below. And that one is, answer is 1. So that's visual discrimination. Visual memory, you're going to say, look at this design for a few seconds, and then you give a few seconds and remember it. And you give the client 5 minutes to remember it. Excuse me. You give the client 5 seconds to look at that image. And then you turn the page and ask them to find the image they just saw among the images here. So that would be 2. And again, I'm going to flip to show you how challenging it can get. Again, to reinforce, you stop when they've gotten 5 out of the 8 wrong. Excuse me, 5 out of 7 wrong. So they have to, this is the 18th item, the hardest one. They have to find this item after they've looked at it for 5 seconds among the items here. And the answer is 1. So that's visual memory. Spatial relationships, you're going to say, look at the designs here. which of these is different from all the others? And the answer would be 3. And again, they get progressively harder. So which one of these is different than the others? Until you get to number 18. So which of these is different than the others? The answer is 4. Form constancy. Look at this design at the top. Now find it down here. Where at the bottom do you see this top shape? So the answer would be, the answer would be 2. And you're going to keep doing that. So the answer to this one is 3, for example. And then I have to, for this one, flip the book. And then here's the last one for form constancy. You have to find this item down here. And the answer is 2. Okay. Sequential visual memory. You're going to say, look at this design for a few seconds and remember it. You give the client 5 seconds to look at it and try and remember it. And then you say, which of these designs shows the shapes in the same order as you last saw them? And the answer in this case would be 4. And you keep going, to do practice. And then the items keep going until they get 5 out of 7 wrong. You can see they're definitely getting progressively harder. Still only have 5 seconds to look at them. So this is the last one. Look at this design for a few seconds and remember it. Give them 5 seconds. And then say, which of these designs shows the shapes in the same order as you just saw them? And the answer is actually 4. Visual figure ground. You're going to say at the top, you see a shape. In which picture below do you find the exact same shape hiding? And the answer would be 1. So that's practice 1. This would be practice 2. All the way, then you begin administering it and scoring. The final one looks like this. So at the top you see a shape. In which picture below do you find the exact same shape hiding? And the answer would be 2. And then the last subtest is visual closure. And we're going to say if these designs below were completed and not moved around, which one would look exactly like the one at the top? And the answer would be 1. So if these designs below were completed and not moved around, which one would look exactly like the one at the top? And the answer would be 3. You can see then as you begin to score, they get progressively harder all the way to number 18. So if these designs below were completed and not moved around, which one would look exactly like the one at the top? And the answer would be 2. Just to reinforce, the instructions, are in the manual as well as listed for the subtests. And I was giving the prompts kind of repeatedly, but you only need to repeat the prompts as needed for the remaining items. So if they get the hang of it, answering appropriately, you don't need to keep saying it after each test item. And again, the manual has all sorts of charts to help you determine scale scores, percentiles, age equivalents, things like that.